Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. I know it's been a couple of minutes. Well, it's 8 o'clock in Chicago, Illinois. It's Friday night, and yeah, I'm not going to a show. No limos coming for me. I'm actually here in the city of Big Shoulders, picking up a load, and you know it's going to be a good night when you walk into the shipping department and they get your numbers and everything, and then they say, oh hey, this appointment was for yesterday. And of course, what does night dispatch do? Oh, I'll message sales. Yeah, message sales and tell them they're effed up. There's the message. So maybe I'll get loaded, but you know, Chicago's in Central Time. This load's supposed to be in Indianapolis at 05 Eastern Time. So, you know, I was like, oh, that'll be easy. But I don't know if that's going to be easy now, because the guy basically told me if other trucks show up, although maybe they got a problem with trucks showing up. But he said if other trucks show up, then I'll be at the back of the list. So lots going on, but let's talk. I had 1,578 subscribers. So let's talk about something that happened in 1578, which is interesting to me because I was in the Navy, and so I'm going to talk about Sir Francis Drake, and you might be like, oh, Terry's going to tell us about when Sir Francis Drake, you know, defeated the Spanish Armada. Well, you would be wrong, because that actually happened in 1588, so 10 years later. But I am going to talk about Sir Francis Drake. So in around 1578, he undertook a global circumnavigation. Now, he was trying to basically imitate what Magellan had done. But along the way, what he didn't reveal to people, at least publicly, was really that his mission, and this kind of is a harbinger of what would happen 10 years later. But you know, the British and the Spanish had the two most powerful navies in the world. The Spanish were bringing back lots and lots of treasure from the New World. So Drake actually was undertaking this expedition to, you know, sort of circumnavigate the world, but really just to go to places where the Spaniards were and, you know, beat their ass and take their stuff. And so what happened though was that there was a soldier, politician kind of guy with Drake, and he was in command of one of the ships, and his name was Thomas Doty. And you know, I don't know exactly, well, so one of the things that probably did happen was that Doty revealed to some people in England that the main reason for going on this expedition was to like loot Spanish galleons. And there were forces in, because keep in mind, even though Elizabeth I was the queen, and by the way, Elizabeth II died. You probably all heard that. Longest serving British monarch. So like, I just turned 60 the other day. Queen Elizabeth II has been the queen, you know, 10 years before I was born. That's how long she's been queen. Anyway, so going back to Elizabeth I, daughter of Henry VIII, you know, there was still a parliament, right? Like, so she, you know, she was the queen and she had a lot of power, but there was still a parliament. There were still politicians who mattered. And some politicians didn't want to fight with the Spaniards. They thought it was counterproductive. It was just bad foreign policy. So Doty may have told somebody about the actual true nature of this expedition, and Drake was unhappy with him and accused him of treason. He also accused him of mutiny. And so what ends up happening is that Drake decides, he goes before a board of sailors from his ships, and he basically says Doty's treasonous and mutinous and he should be executed. And, you know, at first people that had knowledge of the situation were like, do you even have a royal commission? You know, are you even authorized to punish anybody like this? Because corporal punishment on ships was pretty much the norm. But the idea that you could take somebody who, by the way, was of the same, actually a higher social status than Drake, that you could just, like, the mission commander, essentially, the commanding officer could just, like, decide to have him tried and executed, was like uncharted waters, pun intended. Well, what ends up happening is there is a trial. He's not convicted of treason, and there's a lot of pressure on people, and Drake gets his way. And after having, by the way, Doty and Drake like have dinner together and laugh, and they're all jovial right before Doty's execution, and he was beheaded. And the reason that this was a big deal is because it kind of set the precedent that commanding officers or captains of ships at sea, right, at sea, had enormous power over discipline and stuff like that. Because if there was a mutiny, right, the commanding officer wouldn't be able to just call somebody, go, hey, can you send some MPs over here or some shore patrol? Because there wasn't anybody. And they're just out in the middle of the ocean, right? So their power is in many ways absolute, right? Like, you know, you've heard the saying, I'm the captain now, right? Like, that's out at sea, the captain has, you know, in many times the final word, and no one above them, who have all been captains at sea, is really going to question that that judgment. Now, I will say that in the modern day Navy, at least the U.S. Navy, if a captain makes one mistake, he's going to be, you know, fired, right? They have a ton of power, but they have all the accountability, all the responsibility, right? Really all the responsibility. You can delegate accountability, but they have all the responsibility. So it doesn't matter if Seaman Scruffy screws up. If the ship hits a rock, if it runs aground, if, you know, you inadvertently kill some civilians, the captain is going to pay, right? That's just how it works. So anyway, that happened. By the way, Doty was executed on July 2nd of 1578. But even though it was a huge deal, Drake did not fall out of favor with the crown, and, you know, ended up being not the only commander that defeated the Spanish Armada, because there was actually a series of battles, but we'll get to that if I get to 1,588 subscribers. Okay, so in other news, I took some time off. Man, August was a horrible month for me, for my truck, for my family. It was just a horrible month. You know, and I don't want to be super dramatic, but there were a lot of setbacks in the month, and some of them are not recoverable from. But you know, we just carry on smartly and hope that everything's going to go better in you know, the last 4 months of the year. So anyway, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but USXpress is now reorganizing again. They basically conceded that Variant is nothing more than smoke and mirrors. You know, Variant had this headquarters in Atlanta because they were going to attract all this best and brightest talent, but that's being closed. Variant's just being rolled under the same, they've divided up into two divisions. One's dedicated, and then the other division, which I think they're calling the road division or something, transportation, it's going to be Variant, USXpress, Legacy OTR, and their brokerage. Yeah. So if you're at Variant and you're done with the experiment, reach out to me. I think, and by the way, if you like what you're doing there, that's fine. That's fine. But if you're like, I was sold a bill of goods, it's no different than any other trucking company I've worked for, yada yada, I just got a different colored tractor. It's still the same people. Because basically what they did is they took the guy that ran brokerage and they made him in charge of the dedicated division. And then this guy that was like a junior guy, senior guy at dedicated went to the new truck division, or whatever you call it, transportation, with the Legacy, OTR, and Variant, and brokerage. A guy that was second in command at brokerage then he's now going to be the head of dedicated. So, it's just shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic, right? You got the same people with bad ideas, just switching things around. It's like if you have a crappy cable company and or a bank and they change their name. Is that going to make them less crappy? No, it's just designed to make you forget about the fact that the legacy company was crappy. Okay? Good companies, they don't mess with the formula, right? Like Prime's has added divisions over the years, but they haven't said, oh, we're going to call this other company, Awesomeness, and we're going to have different colored trucks, and we're going to do everything. This is going to be next level, the killer app. No, you either get it right or you don't, right? So anyway, that's the deal with USX. Listen, I wanted to talk about quiet quitting a little bit and stuff like that. So, first of all, there's no such thing as quiet quitting. Okay? And here's why I say that this is the main theme of today's broadcast. So people are saying, oh, quiet quitting is not doing anything extra. And, not just doing your job and punching out and going home, right? You earn the pay you are entitled to, and that's it. And my response to this whole idea of quiet quitting is, if you want to call it that, that's fine, right? If you got to have a name for it. But really what it is being mercenary. And what I mean by that is that you don't do compensable things without compensation. And let me give you a quick story about something that happened when I was a lawyer. So I got introduced to this guy that was a potential client, and I said, oh, okay, how can I help you? And he's like, oh, well, I need help with this commercial lease. And I did a lot of commercial leases for people, small business owners and stuff. So he said, how much will it cost for you to review this lease? And I said, oh, $500. He's like, okay. So he pays me the $500. And then he said he's having trouble with a residential tenant, right? And he needed me to kind of broker a deal where this guy would leave and, he would get his deposit back, or, and just kind of basically help me evict a guy without really evicting him. And the guy wanted to move, and my client wanted him to move, so it was kind of mutual. It was just agreeing to the terms of the breakup. So I said, sure, I can help you with that, right? Because I can strike some middle ground and try to make everybody happy or make everybody angry. Either way, that you did a good job if everybody's pissed or no one's pissed. Anyway, but I said to him, hey, Okay, well, I'll do this for you, but I need like $200 for that. And he's like, okay. So I get the guy out, and the tenant actually said to me, he goes, you know what? I appreciate that you did this because I really can't deal with the landlord, but you're reasonable and you're easy to work with, and you know, one of the reasons I'm willing to leave without putting up a huge fight is because you were respectful, and you know what you said made sense. And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. That was my role, right? That's what I'm getting paid to do. So anyway, this guy invites me to meet up with him and his wife for lunch. And this is kind of a sidebar, but we meet at Panera during the work week. And Panera's like jam-packed with people because this guy was a senior, he was kind of a senior guy at a federal agency, but he was also starting his own businesses and stuff. So I meet him there, but his wife brings the 3-year-old who has zero boundaries and who has parents that recognize zero boundaries. So the whole time that we're like there and sitting at a table right in the middle of this Panera Bread, the kid is like, you know, like running amok and like literally like touching stuff on other people's tables, and they don't really say much. The only time they call him is when they lost sight of him, right? But so that was kind of a weird distraction to the whole thing. But then at the lunch, right, he pays for my lunch, which is, who cares, right? It's Panera. It's not like we went to freaking Morton's. But anyway, he you know, he buys me lunch, and so I said, hey, you know, don't forget, because he had paid me the $500. I said, now, hey, don't forget, you know, to give me that $250. Now, here's the thing. $250 is not a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money if you have no money, but, you know, it wasn't going to like keep my kids from going to college or me making a car payment, right? It wasn't that much money. But I have this principle, and, you know, it is that when you make a deal, don't try to like cram me down afterwards, because that would always piss me off. And so he's like, oh, well, you know what? I already gave you the $500, and you know, you just took care of this for me, and you know, I'm going to be giving you a lot more business. I was like, well, yeah, that's great, but I still expect the $250. So he never sends the $250, but he still calls me to do stuff, right? And I'm like, dude, I'm busy. I'm not gonna, you know, I never forgot about that, right? I never forgot about that because I was being mercenary. I don't care, you know, and honestly, I don't care if he would have said, oh, I got $10,000 to do this other deal. It wouldn't have mattered to me because I didn't trust him, right? He screwed me over. And like I said, it's not about the money, it's about the principle. I mean, $250, you know, I certainly would have used it. I would have put gas in my car, but it was the principle. And so I read about this donut shop in Frederick, Maryland that closed the other day, and people had, you know, kept working even though their checks were bouncing or they weren't getting paid on time. And let me say this about all of this quiet quitting and how to protect yourself. You must look out for number one, okay? You can be a good coworker. You can be a good employee. But the second that your employer or your client doesn't live up to their part of the bargain, you cut them loose. You fire your client, you fire your employee. Or your employer, right? I mean, when I was at Schugel, that's basically what I did. I fired the company. I took their truck back, went home on home time, and never came back, right? I don't give 2 weeks notice. I don't even give 2 minutes notice. You're not entitled to that, okay? Don't sell yourself short, right? And let me also say this. If our economy goes into a recession, and this won't really happen with truck drivers, but it will happen with other people. If your company offers you a buyout, okay, take it. Even if you love working there and you think the buyout isn't that much money, take it, and I'll tell you why. Back in 2000, late 2008, early 2009, I worked at MetLife, and we did a lot of insurance policies, group policies for big companies. One of our big clients was Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae, after about August of 2008, when the shit was hitting the fan on Wall Street, Fannie Mae was like, we got to cut, and we got to cut fast. So they offered a lot of people buyouts, and people took them. But the economy was tightening up, and it was going to be a situation where there might not be other jobs available. But then what happened is not enough people took the buyouts that Fannie offered, and Fannie still needed to lose people. Guess what they did? They laid people off, and then the second round there was no buyouts. Okay? If your company offers you a buyout, it's their way of saying, we're willing to give you money now, but we really are going to get rid of you at some point, unless everybody else in your office takes this buyout. You know, we'll keep you around to take the trash out. But never forget that companies don't do stuff by accident. When the first group of people at USX was laid off, that was notice to the second group of people that there were going to be layoffs. Okay? It happens like that in every industry. You know, I know people that were at Lehman Brothers in 2008, and they just kept hanging on thinking the government was going to step in and give them money like they did with Fannie and Freddie and some, you know, all the big banks. But the problem with Lehman Brothers was they weren't a money center bank. They didn't have branches where people could, you know, regular consumers would be like, oh shit, my bank's closing, and have a run on the treasury. Lehman Brothers was expendable because they weren't in the consumer space the way Citibank or Wells Fargo or, you know, JP Morgan Chase was or is. And the people at Lehman Brothers, smart though they be, a lot of them didn't read the tea leaves. Okay? And so you got to read the tea leaves. Value yourself over your company, right? Value yourself over your company. If you're an at-will employee, your compensation is only as good as the last paycheck that cleared. The second something is not right, leave. Leave and file a claim for the money you're owed. But don't wait another minute, because if a company can't make payroll, they're not making their other bills. And getting back to the donut company, the business closed, but guess why? The landlord came in and evicted the business. So when these people weren't getting paid their salaries, guess what else wasn't getting paid? The rent. So anyway, I know that's a whole lot to absorb. It's good to be back talking with you. I got a bunch of other content that I'm getting ready to get to work on. I've kind of had my hiatus. I kind of licked my wounds, and yeah, we're back in the saddle again. So I will talk to you guys soon. Thanks.